had a few buddies, and we were all like big Metallica fans, and so we decided we should play a Metallica song at our middle school talent show. And so, yeah, it was three of us on guitar, one guy on bass, and then we had a drummer. And nobody sang. Like nobody had the courage to try to sing like James Hetfield. We were all like 13 years old.
Planet Guitar warmly welcomes today one of the world's leading acoustic guitarists, Andy McKee. Welcome, Andy.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It's a real pleasure.
Andy, you released Home on the Range earlier this year. What drew you to that folk song?
Well, I'm actually from the state of Kansas here in the United States, and that's our state song. I was approached actually initially by a state tourism board. They said, "Hey, would you want to do an arrangement of Home on the Range for solo guitar, to help promote Kansas or whatever?" And I said, "Sure." So it was kind of a fun challenge. I don't do a lot of sort of traditional cowboy tunes on guitar or anything like that. So but it was fun trying to arrange it for a guitar and get the vocal melody and all that stuff. I always enjoy doing arrangements of tunes. So but anyway, that's how it came about, and then I just released it as well so anybody could hear it on my Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. So
of course, it's been covered countless times by artists like Pete Seeger, Slim Whitman, Tori Amos. How do you approach adding something new to a cover like this?
Well, I guess, just the instrumental solo guitar idea of arranging it like that. I'm not sure if that had ever been done before or not, but, I just wanted to kind of take my knowledge of, arranging for guitar and see what I could come up with. I did listen to some of the old original recordings and try to get some of the sort of fiddle lines that you can hear like at the beginning. And get that on the guitar. But otherwise, it was just kind of sticking to the melody and accompanying a bit with some chords behind it. So
you've also, of course, famously covered Toto's Africa and Tears for Fears' Everybody Wants to Rule the World. What draws you to cover a particular song?
Really, for me, it's just like if I like the song. If I'm a huge fan of those tunes. I'm 44 now. I was born in 1979, and so some of the first music I heard was 80s. Pop and rock music, and my parents would always play records too. I was growing up, so I got some stuff from the 70s and 60s as well. But I kind of took to the 80s music, and MTV was brand new, and was always checking out new videos, and so I just have a nostalgia maybe a bit too for 80s music, and I think they were really creative in that era. There were so many different kinds of bands. I felt like in the pop music world. You could hear stuff like Duran Duran or Madonna. And then, even there was a lot of really cool rock and heavy metal stuff kind of at that time that I got into a little bit later. Well, not too much later. When I was 8 years old, I got into Iron Maiden. So that was kind of a big turning point for me for getting into rock music was hearing Iron Maiden when I was about 8 years old. But any case, when I go to arrange stuff for guitar, I just kind of stick with stuff that I love, and I just have this sort of passion to see if I can make it happen, So Africa and the Tears for Fears tune. I've done a game called Skyrim. I did a tune from that called Streets of Whiterun because I'm really into video games. So yeah, it's just a matter of if I love a tune, I feel like I want to try to arrange it, I'll do it.
I was intrigued by your comment that you want to give listeners a chance to hear what I hear when I listen to the music. Do you hear something that the artists themselves don't hear?
Oh gosh, probably not. I guess that'd be hard to know. But I guess if there's a certain chord, or a melodic phrase that really moves me when I try to arrange it or play it, I'll just try to give it, that sort of gravitas or depth to it, and try to control the dynamics and just try to express it in the way that it hits me. If I'm taking a tune like one of those pop tunes where there's vocals and everything, maybe some people are used to hearing the lyrics, and that's kind of what they latched onto a bit more. But as I'm doing like an instrumental sort of arrangement, I just try to make sure that the music, has some feeling to it, and that hopefully people can feel what I feel when I hear music. So
going back to your childhood, you mentioned that you came from a family where they played music, but were they actually did they play instruments?
No, actually, nobody in my family really played any instruments. My mom did get my dad a guitar in the '70s, but he never played it really. My mom had a piano, like an upright sort of piano that we had in the house, but I never heard her play it once, and so it was kind of strange. But I do have a cousin that is a guitar player as well. He was really into Eddie Van Halen, and so he showed me a lot of rock guitar stuff early on, and got me some new techniques and things like that. But not my parents or my brother or sister. Nobody really played any instruments. Yeah.
But I understand that when you were 13, you an area nylon string guitar arrived in your house. Where did that come from?
Yeah, yeah. So my dad got me that guitar. I had just moved back to Kansas here from New Mexico, and I saw that there was this guitar class in the middle school that I was going to start attending. And I thought, oh man, I'll try it out. And because I had really been a fan of music, just listening. Really, I had a Sony Walkman and would always listen to that all the time. Bands like NXS, or I got into Metallica too. And so, there was this opportunity to take a guitar class. I thought, well, sure, it's better than doing jumping jacks and physical education or something. So I got in there and just started to enjoy it, and asked my dad, hey, you think I could get a guitar for my birthday just to practice at home? So he got me one from the pawn shop, and that's where it started. And I was really into electric guitar, but as you said, it was a nylon string. So I started to look at, what can I play on this thing other than trying to learn Crazy Train or something and play it on a classical guitar. So, I started to look at things like Dust in the Wind from the band Kansas. They had this finger picking thing, and some Led Zeppelin tunes that had finger picking in it. There were a couple of Metallica songs at that time, like Unforgiven and Nothing Else Matters, that had some acoustic guitar and finger picking in it. So I kind of played around on that for a little while, but then shortly after got an electric guitar and was focused on that for a few years. Yeah.
I understand that you only took a few lessons and you then turned your back on them. Is that right?
But yeah. I had, I guess it was about a year of lessons when I started. And the teacher that I had, he kind of showed me some of the basics and things like that. Then he would just, ask me to bring in a CD of a song I like, something like that. So I'd take in a song and he'd show me, and I thought it was really cool how he could just listen to it and start to figure it out. So I started to try to do that on my own at home, and eventually, kind of developed my ear to be able to pick out what was going on. So I started to just do that on my own, and I ended up picking up a tune called "Song for George" by Eric Johnson off of his Avia Musicon album, and it's a finger picking acoustic guitar tune. And so I kind of learned most of it as best I could anyway, and went and played for my teacher, and he was really impressed. And he's like, "Man, I don't know if I could teach you anything." So I was just like, well, okay. So I just kind of went on my own at that point. But so I mostly learned on my own from there. And I started to teach guitar lessons in my late teenage years. And so I would always just kind of stay, a few pages ahead in the book. And I actually learned quite a bit from teaching that way. So learned about chord construction and harmony and different scales and modes and things like that.
You mentioned Iron Maiden and Metallica, of course. I understand that you actually played a Metallica song in your high school for the talent show when you were younger. Do you remember that moment now?
Oh, absolutely. Clear as day. I mean, it was like incredible. I mean, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to see Metallica tonight in Pantera in St. Louis with my brother. We're going to be traveling over there to see that concert tonight. But yeah, when I was, I guess when I was about 12 or 13, the Black Album from Metallica came out, and Enter Sandman was on the radio, and it was like incredible. It was so cool. And I had been a fan of Metallica for a few years. I originally saw the video for One on MTV, and had my mind blown. Lars doing the double bass thing. I'd never heard anything like that. So I became a big Metallica fan. But anyway, when the Black Album came out, it was really incredible. And that was right around when I started to play guitar. So I had a few buddies, and we were all like big Metallica fans. And so we decided we should play a Metallica song at our middle school talent show. And so, yeah, it was three of us on guitar, one guy on bass, and then we had a drummer, and nobody sang. Like nobody had the courage to try to sing like James Hetfield. We were all like 13 years old. So it was this like instrumental version of Enter Sandman, but nobody was even playing the vocal melody. It was just the guitar riffs. And And then I, tried to do the solo, and I had only been playing guitar for a year at that point, and I really screwed the solo up big time. It's like awful. And unfortunately, there's a video of that out there somewhere. So I hope it doesn't ever end up on YouTube, because my career will be kaput at that point. It's pretty atrocious, but nonetheless, at the time we were like the coolest kids. All of a sudden, we were all kind of the weird kids with long hair, and kind of wore black clothes all the time and didn't really talk to too many people. But then we did Enter Sandman, and everyone thought we were the greatest. So we felt good, and that, I guess, was a part of me wanting to become more of a performer, too. Um, just that feeling of getting to play for people, and then they love it, and you feel good, and that whole thing. So that was kind of kicked it off, for me, like that feeling like, yeah, maybe I should try to do this somehow and be a guitar player. So.
And then when you were 16, your cousin took you to see Preston Reed play live, and that changed your whole life.
Yeah.
What a present that turned out to be.
Yeah, really. It's funny when you think about, all the sort of pivotal moments in your life where if one thing had changed, who knows where you'd be. So, but that was definitely a very big moment for me. And, it was really just on a whim. It's that same cousin that plays really into Van Halen. He just said, "Hey, you want to go see this guy play acoustic guitar? He's doing like a Washburn guitar clinic." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And so, we went and saw him, and he was using altered tunings and unusual techniques that I had no idea, using the guitar body as a percussion instrument while doing chords and these slap harmonic. I didn't know what was going on. I was just completely mesmerized and wanted to know what was going on there. How is that even happening? So I went home that night and tried to sort of replicate that stuff, but I couldn't do it at all. I didn't even realize he was in a different tuning. So it just wasn't happening. But so I think about a year went by or so, because I didn't know how to even get into it. But after about a year, I did find this VHS cassette at the music store that I was teaching at, and they had this Preston Reed instructional video. So I learned the tunes off of that and picked up, some techniques. And then, going back to using my ear, I went back to his album and was like, well, maybe I can figure out some of these other tunes that I like, that weren't on the VHS cassette. So I really dove into his album called Metal and tried to pick up as much as I could. And yeah, and just I loved, the techniques, and the intellectual side of it was really stimulating, for me, but also I just love that it was, one guy, and he's expressing himself, and there's like no mystery there, kind of. It's, as far as the music, it's just really direct, I guess is what I should say. And I liked that element. And so it just became like my path. Like I wanted to be able to do that and be able to express myself that way with the guitar. I loved how, there's melody and there's harmony and there's rhythm all going on at once. And it just seemed like such a direct but also broad way to express yourself with the guitar, rather than doing chords and then maybe doing a guitar solo. You're trying to cover all those aspects at once. I really was drawn to that. Michael
Hedges, of course, was a massive influence for you, and there's your wonderful tribute to The Friend I Never Met. Do you still play that song often?
I do, when I've got my harp guitar with me, which sometimes it's really hard to travel with the harp guitar, unfortunately. It's especially like if I come to Europe, you've got two guitars in a suitcase, and then maybe if you're going to bring the harp guitar, there's another. So it becomes difficult to travel with, and expensive too. So, but if I'm able to take the harp guitar, I'll do that one. And so I did have a few shows in October, in Minneapolis and Chicago and St. Louis, and I had the harp guitar with me, and definitely played that tune for everybody. So yeah, Michael is really my biggest influence. I discovered him shortly after Preston, and his music in particular just it's still, it blows my mind every time I listen to it. And it's sophisticated, and musically, and technique wise, there were things he was doing before anybody, and the way he masterfully did that is incredible. So it's got that base covered as far as like just being kind of mind blowing. But it's also very emotive, his music, and he's got some pieces that aren't necessarily technically insane, but they're just powerful melodies, just incredible. The music he was able to come up with, and very unique mind, and he still, yeah, inspires me to this day. So yeah, I had to write that tune for him. I got into his music shortly before he died, just about a few months before he died in 1997.
Mm.
So I never got to meet him or see him perform. So that tune's for him. Yeah.
Of course, later in his career, he did some original vocal recordings. Did you ever consider that path yourself?
Honestly, not really. I never really did. I've been thinking about it a little bit more though. Maybe, a vocal tune here or there might be interesting. Uh, that is a whole other skill though that I haven't really developed, actually singing and playing at the same time. So I need to work on that. But I never really did envision myself as singing originally. I was always drawn to instrumental music in a big way, and the first actual cassette I ever bought was the soundtrack to Rocky IV. And the reason I did was because I love the instrumental music in that film, like when he's training or when he's fighting Ivan Drago in the ring. There's this instrumental music that I was really young. I can't remember if that was 1985 or so. But I just remember feeling like so moved by the music, and there was no words, but it was just this epic music, and it felt like, and I've said this a few times in interviews and stuff, but it just feels like magic to me, the way that music can change the way you feel. Like, it's incredible how it has that power, and it's almost like mysterious. Why is it suddenly I feel energetic? I want to get something. I feel motivated because of this music, or I feel I've been feeling down, and this music helps me feel better. What is that power? It's incredible still to me. I love that, and that's still why I'm a musician to this day. So anyway, I always love that mystery about instrumental music. There's no words telling you a story, but there's a melody there, and it's just changing the way you feel. So that's always kind of been my directive since I got into the guitar. But having said that, I do like the idea of singing now and then too, just to break up the show a bit, and interact with people like that. So.
Of course, Preston Reed and Michael Hedges on YouTube, you can see their videos, and they're amazing guitarists. But you have many, many hundreds of times more views. May I ask what you put that down to?
That's a very good question. Well, as you know, just even in this interview, or if your viewers have seen me being interviewed ever before, I really do try hard to let people know about my influences, because I think the way that my career took off on the internet almost 20 years ago, it was a lot of people hadn't seen people play guitar this way, with unusual techniques on the acoustic guitar and things like that. So I have so much respect for the people that inspired me, that I felt obligated to make sure everybody knew that, these are the guys where it came from. So I do try to spread the word, and I even have an album called Symbol, where I'm playing tunes that inspired me from Preston and Michael and so on. So I think part of it is, though, that just, people hadn't seen anyone play that way. And there were some people who hadn't seen anyone play that way maybe in a couple of decades or so, since Michael had passed. So, that was maybe their intro into the world of fingerstyle guitar. And so, that's one component of it, I think. But, I don't know if, whatever my musical sense is, or the music that I end up writing, if that is more accessible sometimes to people, or what. Like maybe some of the players that I really enjoy, maybe their music's not quite as accessible or something. It's hard for me to say for sure, but I've got tunes like For My Father and Rylan, where the melody kind of is trying to stand out a bit more, and I think that's something that people can recognize quickly. If you're playing a guitar tune and it's more ambient and textural and things like that, maybe people will get a bit lost and maybe they'll lose interest or something. But I try to have a good balance of melody and harmony and rhythm. and creativity in there when I write my tunes. So, but you know, it's a mystery to me, because to me, like I could go up there and do like a night of covers of Michael Hedges tunes and just love it and have a great time, and but you know, maybe other people want to hear something I did, but I'm like, why do you want to hear what I did? You should hear what Michael Hedges did. So it's a bit of a mystery to me, I guess.
You've also played with and toured extensively with Michael Manring and also with Dream Theater. I'm wondering if you actually jammed once with John Mayung, the bassist.
Oh, unfortunately, no, we haven't. I did jam once with Jordan and John Petrucci, or maybe a couple times. There was one time on stage, I think it was in Italy, that Jordan came up and played drifting with me and did some improvising along with it. So, but no, I've never had a chance to jam with John Myung, but we've actually talked quite a bit. I think people might be surprised to hear that, because he's kind of known as a bit shy, maybe, or reclusive. But he was very aware of Michael Hedges, actually, and the harp guitar and stuff. So
You have these kind of, in some ways, split passions between the acoustic side and the metal side. I'm just wondering, was it easy for you to choose the professional path you've taken?
yeah, it was. I do still enjoy playing electric guitar, you know, sometimes, and some of the metal. But the fingerstyle guitar, to me, I guess, still is just feels like home to me, I guess, you know. And the way that I like to think about playing guitar, and using, you know, my fingers to do as much as I can, to create as much interesting music as I can, you know, on one guitar. So yeah, it was pretty easy, and I didn't have to be honest, I didn't have to rely on anybody else. You know, when you're in a band, you know, it's like, well, can we all make it to practice at this time? Da, 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 da. And you know, with this, it's just like, well, it's up to me. I've got 8 hours. I'm going to spend all day playing guitar, or whatever it is, you know. So yeah, it just felt like the right choice for me.
When you had that crazy moment with Drifting and the other releases on YouTube, and suddenly millions of people were aware of you, how was that personally for you? Did it affect you?
I think maybe it did. You know, I didn't maybe realize it at the time, but you know, it was certainly mind blowing. I remember my website crashed. You know, and it couldn't keep up with the orders for tablature. People were buying my sheet music, and I was like, how am I even going to ship all this stuff? I don't have enough time in the day, and how do I get more bandwidth and all this stuff? And you know, and then I saw that YouTube had featured drifting on the front page, and so I called the guy at Candy Rat Records and said, "Hey, do you see drifting's on the front page?" And he said, "Well, this could be crazy. You better buckle up. You know, I don't know what's going to happen." Then I said, "Okay," but it felt like maybe my dream was coming true or something. You know, I was just kind of shocking. You know, and I ended up getting a manager and a booking agent, and getting shows lined up, and people were coming to the shows. And it was really incredible, and it's still incredible to me. I mean, you know, it was weird to have sort of like achieved my goal, you know, because I was like, well, where do I go from here? And I started to think about that. You know, it's like I always just wanted to be a guitar player that, you know, could be useful to people and make some good music, you know, and maybe help some people feel good for a while. And it was coming true, you know. And I was just kind of not sure what to do. So, but what I decided in the end was like, well, I guess my new goals are just to be able to continue this thing, you know, and try to create good music, you know, and when I do a show, make sure I play well and put the emotion in there. And I try to develop my sense of dynamics more, and, you know, whatever it is, whatever it means to put feeling into playing the guitar. You know, some people, maybe there's a controversy about that when someone says, "Oh, he's all technique, he has no feel," or you know, he's got no technique. And yeah, but that feeling thing, I think it's real, you know, and the way you express, you know, if you're just going to play fast, it might be tricky to articulate each note in a certain way. But you know, so I started thinking about it. Well, if I'm going to be playing these notes, how can I control them in a way and manipulate this music so that it might be the most effective? And so I started to think more about dynamics and performance and things like that. So anyway, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and yeah, it's been crazy, and I still feel lucky that it all happened, and it's funny, how it was like at the early part of YouTube, and now YouTube is so huge, and I just don't even know if it could have happened if I were nobody until now, and I put drifting up there, I don't know if it would, it would even be seen. It's just insane. I think I was lucky with the timing and having some music for people to listen to, and it worked out. So
Then in 2012, you got a phone call from Prince's management. I'm just wondering if about that moment. Were you having breakfast at the time when that arrived?
yeah, yeah. I remember. I think I was in my studio. It was my manager who had called me up, and he said, "Hey, uh, it looks like I've got this email here from someone who says they're Prince's manager and that he's interested in working together." And it was just incredible. I couldn't even fathom it. And he said he was going to do some investigation to make sure it was all legit. And he called me a few hours later and said, "Yeah, I think it's real." So I said, "Okay, well, sure. What do we do?" And I ended up flying up uh, to Minneapolis and went to Paisley Park and was hanging out with the bass player and the drummer, which is John Blackwell, and Ida Nielsen, I believe is her name, was the bass player. And we went into Paisley Park, and Prince showed up up above. We were in this foyer, and there were all these pigeons like in cages, or not pigeons, like doves, I guess, in cages up above. Yeah. And he came up there and said, "We're going to meet down in the studio B." There was like all these studios in Paisley Park, and went in, and he was just asking me a few questions about my career and stuff, and wanted to make sure I was in control of my music. And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, good." And then he asked me to play some, and I did some of my original stuff, and he was just really enjoying it. I guess he had seen Rylin, was the one in particular on YouTube that he liked a lot. And so, we played some ping pong, and he was incredible at that, and defeated all of us, in a little tournament. And then he said, "Well, what are you doing this year?" And that year, I actually did my second tour with Dream Theater, which was going to Asia. So we played in like Japan and China and Taiwan and Indonesia, I think. And I said, "So I've got that going on." And he said, "Well, all right, well, we'll get a hold of you and figure something out." And the next thing I heard was he had booked some shows in Australia, and it was going to be like 3 shows in Sydney, 3 in Brisbane, and 3 in Melbourne. And it was going to be like right after I got done with this Dream Theater tour. So I went straight from Thailand down to Australia, and we had one rehearsal too, I should say, before we went down there, and had like a set. So I wasn't necessarily going to play in the whole show, but he was going to bring me out as a special guest about the last half of the show or something like that. So, but actually, before I forget, before I went down to Australia, when I was in Thailand in the hotel, it was like 2 days before the tour was supposed to start. There was this email about they wanted me like to wear an outfit, and it was going to be this 50-foot long cape, and they were wondering if I could start the show with some music and then walk along the stage, which was his symbol, and I'd have this like 50-foot cape unfurl, and they were going to project imagery onto the back of the cape like a screen. And I was just like, "This is insane. I can't." I'd never done anything like that. Normally I just wear what I've got on pretty much and go on stage. I'm really not too into theatrics so much, but I ended up not wearing the cape. I was just kind of uncomfortable, but I did come up with an arrangement of Purple Rain to start the show. So they bring me up on this elevator, and I'd play Purple Rain on baritone acoustic guitar, and then they bring me down, and the band would kick off, and and I would actually wait under the stage for like an hour and a half and then come back and play with the band. But yeah, that was pretty incredible. I just, I don't know. Felt so weird about trying to wear a 50-foot cape, so I passed.
I understand that you actually have Prince's pictures to show us. Would you mind doing?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do. I do. Yeah, I don't know if I've actually ever shown these online before or not. But this was the concept there,
Uh,
and let's see if I can do that. Oh, there's a picture of a cup. Whoops. But there's the roughly 50-foot cape, I guess, with a bit of stage there. But yeah, that was it. You know, some people have asked me if I regret not doing it, but I don't know. I'm just too. It wasn't for me to wear a giant cape. So, but pretty crazy.
I understand actually that you turned Prince down twice because it was that, but then he also wanted you to do some more live shows, and you said no.
Oh, he wanted. Did you say he wanted to do more live shows?
Yeah, with you. Yeah, and you.
Well, actually, no, I didn't turn that down. There was an email. Gosh, it was about 4 months before he passed away to do an album of acoustic arrangements of his tunes, with him, you know, singing, and I guess I'd be doing acoustic guitar. And I said that I would like to do that, you know. But there was at the end of the tour. It wasn't necessarily that I turned down more shows, but I felt like I should tell him that it wasn't really my gig. I guess, you know, I like to write my own stuff and do whatever it is that I do, you know, and it's on a way smaller scale, of course. I mean, we were doing unbelievable, like 20, 30,000 people or whatever. And, you know, normally I'm playing for 200, 300, 400 people maybe. Uh, but I like it, you know, and I guess as an artist, you know, some people have this desire to create and express themselves, and that's definitely who I am. I don't want to be somebody's guitar player necessarily, you know. I'd like to try to create my own stuff and be expressive like that. So I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again, but when he mentioned doing the album, I thought that sounded like something I could do.
You're well known for playing from your heart, and I guess you draw on your life experiences when you play. You've got two boys.
Mm-hmm.
Did they influence or have they influenced any of your music?
Yeah, yeah. I actually wrote a tune called "The Reason," and it's dedicated to both of my sons. I have a 12-year-old son named Lachlan and a 10-year-old boy named Brennan. And I guess, you know, I'll get a bit personal with some of that a little. My parents, you know, divorced when I was quite young, and my mom raised me really, and we moved around with her job some and all that. But and then I just sort of had a strained relationship with my dad. So when I, you know, got married and I decided, you know, well, I always wanted kids and was finally able to convince my wife we should get, you know, go ahead and have some kids. I knew that I wanted to be there for them as much as possible, you know, and try to guide them and how to be a good person, you know, and how to behave right and all that stuff. So, you know, being a dad and being a positive influence and just being there for them and showing them how to interact with people and how to talk to people, all that was a high priority for me. And honestly, I think maybe there may have been some side effects from that. Like, you know, actually, I haven't really released music as often as other musicians, you know, because I kind of honestly get focused on my family sometimes, and you know, and I don't spend the time in the studio to write maybe now and then, you know. But you know, so any case, yeah, you know, my kids definitely inspired that tune. And my wife, I've got tunes for her. I've got, you know, the tune for my dad when he passed away. All those things, I think, you know, that's what music. That's where it comes from. You know, the good stuff anyway. I think if you get a little too like, I'm going to write a difficult guitar song and that's my objective, you know, that's one thing, I guess. But the stuff that seems to connect with people is when you really think about your life and what do you want to say here with the instrument. And that's that's what gets those tunes for me. That's where they come from, is life experience and the people that you know and love. They help you write your music. So
When you read all the comments on YouTube underneath your songs, a lot of people say this really has helped me with my pain, and they say things like "you heal broken souls." That must be a continuing inspiration for you.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, that's the point of it all, I think. Because because I had that experience myself. When you hear some music that just it just heals you, like I said earlier too. That's more powerful than any other effect that music can have, I think. So that's what I try to go for when I write most of my music. Yeah, and to hear that sort of feedback from people, really, it gives me purpose and fills me with a sense of why I'm here. Some people wonder what's the meaning of life, and I think it's like you have to give your life meaning. And so trying to write music that's helpful to people became my meaning in life, I guess. And so when people tell me that, yeah, makes me feel like I'm on the right path, doing the right thing.
Andy, I know you're a very, very busy person. We so appreciate you finding time today to speak to us on Planet Guitar. Thank you very much.
Oh man, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks for your questions. Those were all a lot of fun and really, really good. So thanks for coming up with some good questions.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.